Welcome to the Mind Body Couple podcast.
I'm Tanner Murtaugh.
And I'm Ann Hampson.
This podcast is dedicated to helping you unlearn chronic pain and symptoms.
If you need support with your healing, you can book in for a consultation with one of our therapists at painpsychotherapy.ca.
Or purchase our online course at embodycommunity.com to access in-depth education, somatic practices, recovery tools, and an interactive community focused on healing. Links in the description of each episode. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back. We are in the midst of a family sickness.
Yes, I apologize if I sound a little bit sick. I am the start of the sickness, which we fear will spread.
Yes, and last time we talked about parenting while healing.
Yeah, I feel like this falls into that a little bit
well,
now.
We're talking about parenting while podcasting.
It is.
And usually me and Ann are pretty good. Like we do it on Fridays when our kids are at school. But currently it is Sunday at 11:30 and our kids are upstairs watching TV. So I have a feeling our producer Alex is going to be cutting in and out as kids whip downstairs.
Yeah, a little bit. So we apologize if there's any bumps here. But this really leads us into our podcast topic for today, which is it's not about parenting with kids. It's more about parenting ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Self-parenting.
Self-parenting, yep. And I want to say this is a topic that I talk about with a lot of people, that kind of for recovery, we need to learn how to self-parent a bit.
Yes, I think it's very essential. And when we talk about, like neuroplastic pain and symptoms, especially if you're new to our podcast, neuroplastic pain and symptoms, they can arise in different ways. In some cases, the pain and symptoms started from an injury, a physical issue that heals, but then the brain just continues to generate the symptoms over time. Yeah,
and then sometimes in other cases, there's actually no injury or event, but symptoms, they kind of come on suddenly or they start to build over time.
Yeah, and I think in either case, the common, thread in all of this is a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
This is what triggers and perpetuates neuroplastic pain and symptoms. It's when we're in this chronic stress state, a chronic dysregulated state of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or shutdown. And essentially, you think about pain and symptoms, they're an alert mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
They're the brain's protective mechanism. So when we're dysregulated, it's just going to start to fire this stuff off.
Yeah, and I think it's not uncommon when I talk to people that most people, when they look at their life, kind of before symptoms or when symptoms started emerging, that they weren't really looking after themselves in a way that was helpful for them.
Yeah, I think, and we're careful here because no one's to blame for this.
No.
We do hold the responsibility, which can be scary. Like we hold the responsibility actually like changing this and working on this. But even for myself, long before my symptoms started, I was clearly like my mental well-being, my nervous system state, it was like the last priority on my to-do list.
Yeah.
And as a result, like I wasn't being a good self-parent.
Mm-hmm.
I was working hard, way past my limits, but everything else in terms of like mental well-being just fell flat for me.
Well, and I think sometimes like, obviously, and for many of us, myself included, we don't realize that until something happens. And for like, when we're talking about chronic pain and symptoms, usually that's just something that happens where we're like, oh, now let me look back and see kind of what was going on.
Yeah, like a common thing I see with people is like they're missing cues to meet their own needs. And this can happen for several reasons. For a lot of people, we're just not embodied. We aren't very skilled at feeling or responding to our body and nervous system cues. And essentially, this means we don't know when we're dysregulated until it's really extreme. and we don't respond with rest, exercise, breathing practices, play, downtime. Like we don't provide our nervous system essentially what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us, we just didn't grow up with the practice of mindfulness, embodiments, meditation, qigong, like all these things are really essential.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of the things you just listed off, Tanner, like have been around for, many, many years and in many different cultures. Um, but if we kind of don't grow up learning about it, or if it's kind of not part of the way we operate, then that's right. Why would we be using those types of things
Yeah.
for nervous system
Yeah,
regulation?
we just essentially don't learn to be in our body.
Yes.
And I think nowadays, like kids are getting a lot more of this,
Yes,
which is
there's a
great.
lot more talk.
Like our son's like learning breathing patterns in school. Like that
Yeah.
never happened when I was in
That's
school.
so funny because I feel like there was one night where we were teaching him some breathing and he's like, oh, I know this. It's bear breathing. And I was like, what? And he's learning about it in school. So
Yeah.
I think there's more discussion, at least right now where we live, around these types of practices.
We're moving in that direction, but our culture, it's very cognitive, meaning we greatly privilege thinking and analyzing over actually exploring and expressing emotions or dysregulation.
Yeah.
And so as a result, like if we're just in our head, we just miss cues constantly from our body.
And sometimes we feel, even though it can feel very unsafe, but sometimes it can also feel emotionally safer when we are kind of up in our head than in our bodies.
Yeah. And then what will happen to people is exactly this. We start to run our system too hard. We just run it into the ground. Perfectionism, for example. I'm a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist, but we're just intense. We're really intense people. We're intense with our work, with our family life, even with hobbies. And so what I'll see with people and why we really struggle to self-parent, because maybe we're saying this concept of self-parenting. You're like, what are you even talking about, Tanner and Ann? Part of the issue is like we're not taking cues off of our body. We're just like running our body and nervous system into the ground. We're doing the opposite of parenting.
Because why would that be the opposite of parenting, Tanner?
Well, when you think about, a good parent, there's probably many definitions with that, so I might define this.
Your definition then.
Like I think a good parent, of course, teaches values to their kids. I think that's very essential. A good parent models values. A good parent brings compassion to their child, supports them, helps them express and feel their emotions. This is like essentially what a good parent does. If our son comes home and he's bullied by someone at school that day, like we're spending time supporting him, being with him, making sure he feels supported, helping him work through that. Maybe we change our plan for the night so like he gets more support because he needs it that night. This is good parenting, in my opinion. But when it comes to self-parenting, we just fall flat a lot of the time.
So it's like kind of rarely what you just described do we apply to ourselves.
Yeah. And to heal neuroplastic pain and symptoms, we need to become more skilled at self-parenting. This means listening and responding to your nervous system and emotions. I'm going to say that again. Listening and responding. There's both that are taking place.
Sometimes I think this can be confusing because if our nervous system is always kind of sending pain signals and kind of like with a conditioned response or with something that it doesn't necessarily need to be, sometimes I think people will talk with me about, well, I don't want to listen too much because it's saying everything is dangerous. So what is that balance of like listening to our nervous system, paying attention, but still kind of challenging as well?
Yeah, so it is a balance. I get what you're saying in the sense that sometimes we're feeling in a heightened state of danger when everything around us is actually safe.
And we want to teach.
You get these with trauma triggers.
Yes.
But I think by connecting more to our body, to our nervous system, we learn that. Like I know I've talked about it on the podcast before. When I travel, it is
everything is dangerous too.
Everything is dangerous. Going to a new coffee shop is dangerous.
Right.
Leaving the hotel room is dangerous.
So cognitively that is probably not.
But I still need to support myself way more while traveling. Even though I consciously know, okay, I'm completely safe right now, I still need to bring compassion to care to myself, probably do more somatic work. Like, so, like, even though maybe I'm interpreting danger where there isn't,
Hmm.
I still need to respond.
So the response would be almost upping the self-parenting
Yeah.
in that time. It doesn't necessarily mean retreat, though.
Yeah. Like, a great example of this is when we talk about self parenting, you just have to think of the opposite of what you would do with parenting. So, our son, very sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
like his father,
Mm-hmm.
very sensitive. I've been in situations where I've seen him interact with his peers, and everything from the outside perspective, the kids were fine, everything was okay. But like he's so sensitive if, someone like turns around to talk to someone else, or like these little moments that he has this huge emotional response. Now, it's not going to be helpful for me to be like, hey, like, you're fine. Your friends like you. Like, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Like, I still need to respond to the sensitivity of that situation and maybe get to a place eventually of like reinterpreting the situation. But I still need to meet his nervous system where it's at.
Okay.
If you've identified that you're failing to understand and meet your own needs, it can be helpful to ask why.
So some things we might want to ask is our competitive culture inviting us into intensity or almost a workaholic kind of mentality? Did our own parents have high expectations that influenced our intensity? Were you often praised for how hard you could work or what you could achieve? Were your role models and mentors also working hard and lacking self care? So, those are good questions to reflect on.
Because it is helpful to understand why we became the way we became. Like, how did this
Mm,
occur?
yeah,
And understanding that, starting to ask some of these questions can be vital.
totally. And it doesn't mean like we want to look back on our past and blame our parents and caregivers. But it's important to get some insight because with often the way we were parented tells us how we maybe approach emotions, how we approach kind of nervous system regulation or following those cues. And so it can be really informative.
hmm Now it's time
Mm.
for sharing story. We're going to share some of our learnings.
Okay.
Sharing story, Ann?
Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
You want me to go first in the sharing story?
No,
Or
just stop calling it sharing
you're
story.
so upset that I keep
Yeah.
saying
No,
sharing story,
I
aren't
don't
you?
like it.
Okay.
No, just maybe talking. We can see talking.
Talking circle?
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
So good. So we did think we'd share some of our favorite lessons and values we learned from our parents,
Mm,
which have helped us parent ourselves.
for sure.
They've helped us with self-parenting. And so one that I want to talk about comes from my father.
Mm.
And I don't know what happened to me. I missed this. It was helpful later because I reflected on him, but I missed it when I
Oh,
was
so
like a
you
child.
learned this but didn't embody
It's
it?
like I saw it,
No.
but I chose to run the opposite direction,
Oh.
which was the wrong direction to
Oh,
go.
Tanner.
And then I came back
Okay.
slowly. But one thing about my father that's very opposite from me is he's very balanced.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very balanced man and in a really great way. Like he really balances out work, family time, hobbies. Like he's not willing to push himself too hard in any direction in a really beneficial way. Like when I was growing up, like he worked, but he didn't work too hard. He wasn't working weekends. He had time to play soccer and hobbies. He spent a lot of time with us as kids. Like there was this balance. And then there's me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not do that. It's like I just excessively pick one area and I just dump all my time and energy into that.
Yeah.
And so balance, but it was helpful reflecting back on like, oh yeah, like he kind of had it figured out. And now I'm moving more in that direction of like spending time with hobbies, making sure I spend time with, my family, making sure I work and work hard, but not to the point where I'm just like that becomes my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So this balance I think has been really helpful. It was a helpful lesson in terms of my self-parenting now because I'm constantly making sure I'm balanced throughout the
Yeah.
week. It's a real challenge if I'm not really conscious of it.
Yeah. And I think for me, like what comes to mind is just kind of the value and act of compassion. Like I always remember receiving a lot of compassion from my family. Um, and I definitely, not like Tanner, I don't think I ran from that. I think growing up, I became very compassionate towards myself, and I was able to kind of apply that to myself, and still have. And that is a big tool that we talk about with a lot of people, that I also use for myself when we think of that self parenting piece.
It's true. And you were probably the person that I know who just very naturally has a ton of compassion for yourself. Like you're just not critical of yourself. Like you're
I,
not.
I don't know. That's a good thing.
No, it's a great.
It just sounds
It's
funny the way you say it. Like
it's just like
I let myself off the hook easily, though. I don't know.
like in a good way
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
Like I think there's something to it that I think so many people struggle with self-criticism,
Yes.
especially people with neuroplastic pain and symptoms.
Yeah.
Because self-criticism is going to breed danger. Danger is going to bring symptoms.
Mm.
But for yourself, like I think
Mm.
you just so naturally, you're never willing to go there.
Not really. Like there, obviously, I can be self-critical, and there's some areas in my life that stand out more than others where I can fall into that more. But I'm happy to say I haven't fallen into that a lot throughout my lifetime. Like I have, obviously, but it hasn't been something. It's always something I can rein in when that's
Mhm.
happening. Yeah.
And now we're going to shift the talking circle to another topic. We also want to talk about reflections of some things we needed to learn later.
Yeah, so this might be things, maybe like Tanner is saying, that we did see but didn't embody.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's also things that we didn't learn from our families. Maybe we learned the opposite growing up. Then now we've really had to kind of learn as adults.
Yeah, so one thing that I'll share is, and with the best intentions of my parents, like I think we were just a really busy family.
Mm.
So, we were in multiple activities every week. We went skiing
Mhm.
every weekend. And so one thing I learned is that almost busyness brings safety.
Yeah.
Like I think I internalized, oh, I need to be busy to be productive, to be safe. Like I kind of internalized this feeling. And one thing I've had to relearn as an adult is that I can be safe while resting.
Hmm.
That rest is okay.
Yes.
Every Sunday, shortly after this, what I do is I sit and I watch just a terrible movie. I try to watch a good movie, but they often turn out terrible because I have like an hour and a half where kids are napping. And so like it's just a way that I'm intentionally practicing rest.
Yeah.
It was such a thing that I had to learn over time.
Yeah. And I think for me, something I've had to learn too is kind of a pressure off, almost that good enough mentality sometimes. And I've really had to embody that. And it doesn't mean I don't want to work hard or try at things or excel. Sometimes I don't need to do it with pressure. And so I've been really trying to apply that in my day to day life and like almost really teach that to myself as an adult.
Hmm. No, I agree. And that's such an important lesson I think so many people need to
Hmm.
learn.
Yes.
And really, like, as you're engaging in this healing work, you want to consider the
Mm.
type of parent you'd like to be for yourself.
I like that. Like, what kind of parent do you want to be? And then what kind of parent do you want to be to you?
Yeah, like perhaps you need more permission to rest, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
Be average. Embrace your averageness.
That's kind of like what I was saying, that pressure off of like, not everything has to be spectacular all the time.
I embrace
I feel
your
Tanner needs to work on
averageness.
that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not where we were going with this at
All
all.
the traits that, yeah, I'm just kidding. It's so bad. But I think we're joking, but like all of us have traits that are average or below average.
And actually, it's okay to be okay with that. And that can feel like a very uncomfortable statement
Yeah.
if like we've kind of learned the opposite.
Exactly. Perhaps, you need to be more assertive to meet your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you need to lovingly push yourself a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us, like we need a little bit more pressure actually. Like we need to like move towards goals and purpose.
Yeah. Something that can be useful is just imagine a child on the soccer field, kind of just playing along, but they had a bad fall they run to their parent or coach. Kind of like neuroplastic pain and symptoms, there's no structural injury the treater focus on, but that child would still need care. They would need compassionate intention from the parent or coach. It wouldn't be helpful if the parent was overly fearful because they fell. It would feel shaming if they were blamed or corrected harshly for what happened. And it would feel scary if they were sad or despairing with them. They would need that love and support. And that way, they could build that confidence. And so that's an example of kind of parenting to that child that we might want to embody to ourselves if we were to stumble or make a mistake.
Exactly. It's a great example because you can think about, how would that parent respond to the child?
Mm-hmm.
And would that response create more danger or more safety?
Yeah. And I often reflect on that idea with people of like, how would you respond? How would you respond to your own child? And if you don't have children, how would you respond to just a young person in your life? Or we can reflect back on our inner child of like, what did we maybe need when we were younger?
Yeah, because often as adults, we need the same thing. We need what wasn't provided. And so self-parenting, people.
Yeah.
We encourage you all to be loving parents for your needs, both in responding to your symptoms and when living your daily life.
Yeah.
So I hope this episode was helpful for everyone.
Yeah, we hope that, you took something out of it. And if anything, kind of what value do you want to apply to that self-parenting for yourself?
Yeah. And we made it through this whole podcast without a kid running downstairs.
I'm a bit concerned, though, so I'm going to, race upstairs after this.
We're going to go upstairs. There's going to be, bubbles everywhere.
Yeah, because it was very quiet, which is odd.
Something's happening up there.
Oh, yes.
We're going to go parent, but in a loving way, we promise.
Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. For more free content, check out the links for our YouTube channel, Instagram, and Facebook accounts in the episode description.
We wish you all healing.